Assalamu alaikum. This is video 2. Okay, so as I said, rather than call for uh, global nuclear disarmament to make humanity safer, to make the world a safer place, especially during the polar shift, right? They call for gun control to remove your ability to defend yourself when you most need it the most, right? Okay, so beware, Ummah, of the Antichrist, the German Nazi Vatican fascist. It's wanting to, and how it wants to ensnare and entrap the newly emerging Christ consciousness in its false flag of global violence. Do not drink the consciously toxic Kool-Aid of the Antichrist, German, Nazi Vatican, or its servant slave, Abu Lahab, Jazaza Pence, Nazi Wahhabi drums regime, dirty regime. Okay? All that they do, everything they do is to serve the Zionist nationals embedded in their occupation of the Holy Land of Palestine and their desire to take over Africa and their natural resources, the remaining natural resources. South Node, negative alter ego, Jinn, Gook, shadow, Wahhabi goblin, ghost shadow beings, unconsciousness must be shed. Okay? It must be shed from the human soul. Okay? So, and like any new year, any celestial new year, okay, it cannot be started in negativity. Okay? The old shit must be removed. That is why the solstice is the winter solstice in Capricorn. Okay? As Saturn represents Capricorn, as Saturn represents the blade, as Saturn represents cutting the shit or the death away from the soul before the new celestial year begins, in March, right? With the spring equinox. So that it's not there by chance. It's there for a reason. So you go into the new time with a pure heart, right? A pure soul. Same way you enter the new celestial year. Same way you enter the new 24,000 year cycle with a pure heart. It must be shed, right? And that is why the veil is being lifted on whole consciousness, so that you will be aware of the shadow beings that do exist in this dimension. They exist in another dimension of time, but the same time overlaps in our dimension. Okay, like in the Quran it says the universe is folded, right? Okay, so if the universe is folded, then time is folded. It overlaps. So the worlds are overlapped, right? So they live in our dimension, but they live in another dimension of time. And that is why you see them during your sleep time, when the body is asleep, and the soul, right, which is also of the spirit, it's the soul, the energy body, right, that intangible body of which is the soul, but it's a body too. It's just intangible, physically intangible. Yeah, it's physically intangible like the body. The body is basically overlapped too with the intangible body, which is the soul. And okay, so the shadow beings have no soul, meaning they have no life, right? They're like They're negative. They have no positive energy, right? No, that's what the soul is positive. They are negative shadow beings. And so they have no, so they try to get the soul from humanity, but they're in the same dimension. They're in the same dimension, our physical dimension, but in another dimension of time. So that is why we cannot see them, because it's the veil of, they're hidden behind a veil of time. Okay, a veil of what they would call spiritual time, but you have to have whole brain to see them. You have they have to be consciously perceived, right, through understanding how they manifest, right, through their actions. Okay, and yeah, through their actions and their psychology, because they have a psychology too. They have a psyche too, right? So you'll know how they try to telecommunicate with the human being, right? They try to telepathically communicate, right? Okay, now, so but they're in the same. They're in the same. As I said, the same realm, right? Because the world is one. It's just fragmented, right? Between as I said, the tangible and intangible. They are intangible because they have no physical body to operate in this dimension, in this physical, tangible world. But they are in this tangible world, just in another time. Just like the East exists, but in another time zone, right? It's another time zone. Okay. So, South Node, negative, alter ego, jinn, gook, wahhabi, goblin, ghost, shadow beings. Okay, that consciousness must be shed in order to enter the new world, or the new consciousness, or to embrace the new consciousness, right? Also, as I said, and to be able to ascend, right? Okay, yeah. Okay, so, and as I said, that is why they're being exposed. They stalk humanity, okay? They stalk, and they're, let me see where I am. So they stalk humanity, and it must be shed, it must be shed. Now, exposure of the sacking of, okay, so and all past misdeeds have to be dealt with, like the sacking of all indigenous African and Arab nations, and indigenous nations native to America, the commercial structure that is known as America, right? The corporate structure that's known as America. And Africans and Arabs are intentionally, okay. And so it must be the sacking of Arab nations and African nations, okay, must be exposed, okay, as well as I said, the indigenous nations to the land of that is now known as America. Okay, what happened to them must be exposed, and what happened to what is happening to Arabs and Africans internationally is likened to exposing that what happened to them. It's like releasing and making rectification for that. It's like exposing, the misdeeds of the past, and as I said, making rectification for that. Okay, so imagine Ljackson, Global Pride, a Royal Purple Kingdom, 52. If if America and Europe are totally sacked after the pole shift, and the Zionist nationalist culture of death has relocated its headquarters to the Holy Land of Palestine and Africa. It would be surrounded by multitudes of African and Arab nations. African and Arabs would be the majority populations, and as such, a dominant humanitarian population would pose a grave threat to the neo-Zionist national Antichrist culture of death that would be occupying those lands. The threat would be so grave as I said, it would be so grave. It would be they would be at their end of their time, because they would be at the end of the road, having no other place to go, because what? The world would, because of the polar shift, they'd have no place to go. So what they want to do, right? They want to get rid of them now through depopulation. Thus we have the so-called war on the savages, right? When they wanted to take over America. We have the war on the terrorists, Arabs, right? And then now we have the calling of African nations they must align themselves with America's new policy, right? Because of ISIS, they can't use ISIS anymore, and the Kurds have been abandoned, right? So they have to find a new kind of alignment, right? So they want to get the Africans to help them, right? And through their HR program, HR 1242, so-called, let's recognize what happened to the poor black people during slavery, or the Hebrew people during slavery, right? So let's get them on board, and let's promise them prison reform, and African prosperity, and what else? And ghetto renovation, and they get them to come on board with us, right? And fight the terrorists, right? Because if the terrorists are fighting, the terrorists attack the Africans who have aligned themselves with the culture of death, the Nazi nationalist culture, the Nazis, right? Then Africans who are now been given whose ghetto has been renovated, and then we got prison reform, right? So and recognize what they happened to them during slavery, right? The Hebrews during slavery, they'll fight for us, right? So the Africans are to be the new ISIS, right? African nations and Africans in America are to be the new ISIS, right? So that they fight for the Zionists, the Nazis, right? To save the Nazi party. And then if the Africans if the African Hebrews and the Africans fight the so-called Arab terrorists, right? Then their problem is taken care of, right? Because they got the Arabs killing the Africans, and the Africans killing the Arab, brother against brother. Because what did we say? The Hebrews and the Arabs are brothers through Hawa, right? The Kemetic woman, or the Egyptian woman, right? Hajar. Right? Through Hajar, they are related, right? Blood related. Okay, so get them to fight each other, right? By the Africans through the sole African prosperity will align with the Nazis. So it's all a freaking game. It's game, political game, postulating. Okay. So then they would kill each other, and they wouldn't have to, and the Nazis wouldn't have to do nothing but sit back and watch and laugh, right? And that's what the shadow beings do. That's what jinn, gooks, and Wahhabi goblins, shadow people do, right? They manipulate the situation, right? And while they stand back, they sit back, and they, stand out of harm's way, acting as if they just innocent. They didn't do nothing. Right? It's a game. Don't buy the bullshit. Okay, so if it's totally sacked, they will be surrounded by Arabs and African. So the best thing for them to do would be cause a war between the two, and have them kill each other, right? For them. And then they take over the land, the natural resources, and everything else, right? So Africans and Arabs would be the majority, as we said. And it's okay. So they fear that. So the threat would be so grave because the neo-national, the neo-Zionist, or the Zionist neo-nationals, Antichrist, criminal culture of death would be at the end of their time because they have nowhere to go. Okay, because every other place would be destroyed, or is threatened to be, stated to be destroyed, or be devastated at least. They will be at the end of the road and have no other place to colonize. They would be as we said, I said that there would be as many African nations surrounding the British Nazis colonies in the Holy Land as there are in Palestine if they tried to occupy without depopulation. And that would create a great threat to them, just as they're trying to depopulate the Arab nations through the war on terror. They would try to they would be depopulating the African nations through African nations aligning with the Nazis to supposedly help them eliminate the Arab populations, right? Arab nations, and that is why. And there's another thing I heard about the new disease. In the Congo, all those diseases are designed to aid in depopulating Africa. That's what it is. Depopulation program to take over the continent. Okay, thus, now with all those African and Arabs, it would be possible for them, the Zionists, to maintain their colonies there. It would make it impossible for the neocolonialism to survive. Thus, depopulation of the African continent is also pertinent as gun control for the survival of the neo-British colonialists, Zionist colonialists, right? Now, thus, the re-scramble for Africa, have the re-scramble for Africa and her trillions upon trillions of net worth in natural resources that are much needed to aid them in the recovery from the pole shift. So, we have the Prosper, we have the HR 1242, supposedly recognize what the poor little Africans suffered during the enslavement of their Hebrew ancestors, and what the Africans contribute. Still ain't telling them who they are. They're Hebrews, as the Bible was written. Everything in the Bible is written basically about them, and the Holy Land is theirs in conjunction with their Palestinian Arab brothers, right? They are Arab. Their Arab brothers, are their relatives, right? Their descendants, or their ancestors as well, right? They share the same ancestors, the same divine ancestors as well, right? The same roots. Okay, so they don't want to tell them that. They're former slaves, African slaves, right? And talk about their contribution, make them feel good, pep them up a bit, right? Make them feel proud to be an American, right? Renovate their ghettos, open the cages, let them out the cages, the prison reform, right? Okay, so that they can, and then let them go back to Africa or Ghana, where they were sold from, right? Let them go back to Ghana and join the Ghanaian military and help fight on the side of the Nazis, okay, the Zionists, right? That hate them, the fascists. Have them fight, because it would be beneficial to the American, to the Nazis, the Zionist Americans, right? Because they understand English, they are basically, they know the culture. They will be easy to work with in this new battle, right? Okay, so basically deceive them again, right? To kill themselves. Okay. So now we have the renovating of the ghetto, okay, and prosper Africa. Anything we can promise them, just anything. Promise them Kunta's foot, if you can. Give Kunta back his foot. Give him back, but they ain't give him back your name, right? They can't reunite your family, do all the things, undo the things that they've done in the past. Just make promises, right? Forked tongue. The forked tongue. Remember, they made many treaties. They still made treaties, right? And broke every treaty. The Trump is breaking every treaty he possibly can make, right? To isolate America, so that to isolate America, but really, so that America, no global organization will be able to hold America responsible. They will not have to adhere to any global organization when America attempts to go alone and strike Iran or something like that, right? So that is why they're doing that. But remember, what I'm trying to say, they broke every treaty with the natives of this land, right? Put them on reservations. Thousands were killed in the Trail of Tears. Don't buy the forked tongue, okay? Don't listen to the words of the hissing serpents, the serpent's hissing forked tongue. They will promise you the moon, the earth, the sun, and the stars. These shadow beings will promise you, but hell will still be the destiny if one listens to them. Okay? Okay. Heaven knows what they promised the African ancestors when they allowed them their generations of their children to be stolen from Africa and enslaved in this their corporate culture of death, right? Only heaven knows what the ancestors were promised in order to allow their children to be napped from the homeland, the home continent, right, of Africa, or which was Alkebulan, right? So you cannot listen to them at all. They will promise the moon and the stars, as I said, the prospering of Africa, the re-innovating of the ghetto, the prison reform, HR, whatever that's called, HR 242, yeah. They will promise everything, okay? It's just political bait, a game. Another game that is played in order to get the Hebrews on, or AKA African Americans, on that boat again, back to the homeland, this time to kill, right? Armed and dangerous, right? Now, they've taken the guns under gun control, right? They're taking all those guns under gun control, right? But now, but in the same time, putting the bullet piercing weapons and depleted uranium tipped bullets in the hands of African aka Hebrew Americans, right? Now they don't want to get their war started until they have deceived the Africans or the Hebrews enough to get them back on that boat and headed with weapons in arm to kill their fellow brothers, right? So they're not going to start their war until they do that. They have to deceive you in order to get you on that boat to rebuild Africa like you constructed America, so that they can take over again, colonize and take over again. Okay? So it's all a game to bait you to get you back on that boat, okay? But this time on warships. Okay. Now, so the other so you go back to the other to the motherland and fight, right, on their behalf. So the African nations, they want to deceive the African nations into supporting the British Rothschild Zionist nationals and their criminal culture of death against the betterment of their survival and of their themselves and their native inhabitants, okay, and the native inhabitants of the motherland of Africa, or Alkebulan. It is why President Muammar Gaddafi was assassinated, because Muammar Gaddafi himself sought to unify the entire African continent. He sought to construct an African World Bank backed by gold, and construct an African investment house that was exclusive to African nations only, and thus they would end their dependency on the IMF. Who generally just comes in and exploits the nations and takes their natural resources by nationalizing them, right? And then the private companies from the West comes in and buys up the natural resources, right? Where the natives themselves cannot utilize them. So President Muammar Gaddafi wanted an economically independent Africa, independent of the independent of the Rothschild Zionist nationals, which are Nazis for short, right? Okay, so Hebrew Africans, aka or Hebrews born in America, aka African Americans. Africans and Arabs alike must not continue to settle for the propaganda in hopes of receiving the scraps of their own natural resources, rather than fill their bellies with the shit-you paper of neo-colonialism or neo-Zionism, Hebrews, Arabs, and Africans must invest in their own native homeland for this new 24,000 year cycle, because you got to remember this too. If America is going to be sacked through the pole shift, and Europe is going to be basically sacked, the only remaining country will be Africa and Australia that will be basically remain intact. So if you allow yourselves to be recolonized, where in the hell are you going to go? Don't allow your home to be taken over. They couldn't get in through the front door through Turkey. Okay, they're trying to get in the back door through Africa. That is why the Zionist Netanyahu went to Ghana. Britain went to, or Charles went to Ghana, in order to try to make a deal so that they could replant their seeds, their prodigal seeds plant their prodigal seeds in Africa, right? That is the game plan, right? They want to take over. And where do you think Africans are going to be? Where do you think your children are going to live? What do you think your children are going to eat? Huh? Feudalism is trying to return. Feudalism is trying to return. Okay? So, and you know how they treated the Europeans during feudalism, how they treated their own brothers and sisters during feudalism. You know how they treated you during being enslaved. Okay? You know how they're treating Africans, Hebrews in America today, right? Currently, right? Anyway, and the reason why they're letting them out of the cages of the prison, right? Prison reform is too costly. Okay? America is broke. The corporation America is belly up. It's like a fish. It's belly up. Okay? Not even a goldfish. Okay? It's belly up. Okay? Now, so Jazza Pence, Wahhab Goblin, Zionist, Drumpf, does not offer reparations whereby African or Hebrews, the formerly enslaved Hebrews, can invest in Africa and bring that money back to the investments back to America and help build America up, stabilize America. No, they want that for themselves. No, we'll just promise you to reinvent the ghetto. Okay? And we'll still own the property and the corporations to bring the jobs. You'll still be employed. Okay? We promise you jobs. They can't even promise them. They can't even give, other Americans jobs. Okay? So how are they going to bring corporations back? Many corporations are closing. Okay? So don't buy the bullshit. Don't buy the hype. Okay? Don't buy the dream, the Nazi dream. Okay? So, they don't give them reparations that Hebrews, to the Hebrews who were formerly enslaved, may invest in themselves and in Africa, which is their own native homeland, the motherland. What is offered is more detriment to all humanity. Okay? So the Rothschild Nazi Zionist Vatican, aka Nazi, the Watchers, because Vat means watch. Okay, a Vat is a watcher. Okay, a Vatican is the son of Cain who was watching. Okay, the Watchers, the Shadow Watchers, the Shadow Beings, right? The Goops, the Goblins, the Spooks, and all of that. And the, what do they call? Goblins. And there's another name for them too. And they have them on the Vatican. Okay. I forget their name, okay? But anyway, so, it's a deception. The Rothschild Nazis, or aka the Watchers, Vatican Watchers, okay? Vat Watchers. The Vats are the Watchers. Vat is a Watcher, okay? And the Vatican are sons of Cain, right? And they're just watching, as I said, like the Gooks and the Goblins. They watch from behind a veil. The Watchers, which are the Antichrist, are sponsored. They sponsor Abu Lahab, Jazza Pence, Wahhabi Nazi drums. Okay, they sponsor him, and he is trying to pretend like he wants to offer prison reform, i.e., prison reform, the H.R. Bill 1242, and the innovation, the renovation of the ghettos, right? So upgrade the ghetto, and offer to the Africans a social welfare program or social warfare program, if only they align themselves to the Nazi program, right? And under the so-called prosperous Africa, right? We'll give you money, but you gotta give us your children again, okay? You gotta give us your children again, so we can this time use them in war, right? They can be our fodder, our cannon fodder, okay? So we'll give you money, but you give us your children again, okay? It is simply a shitty South Node bait in order to keep humanity unconsciously repressed in the gooky, Wahhabi goblin, ghostly jinn state of negative alter ego unconsciousness. It is all a deception in order for the Nazi jinn criminal corporate culture of death, that the criminal culture of death may continue to feed and prosper off of the soul of all humanity, exploit the natural resources in their motherland. They want to destroy the natural environment and make it literally impossible for all humanity to live. Okay? Humanity must awake. You have no friend in the Rothschild global Nazi party of shit, of pig shit, stool of pig shit, right? And its corporate culture of death. Wake the fuck up, humanity. There is no renovating the ghetto or plans for a prosperous Africa. There is no reinvent the ghetto, okay? Or reinvent a homeland, the ghetto for the Hebrew, right? And Arabs and Hebrews are intended to be left behind in a nightmare because they have been disenfranchised out of the Nazi dream for the African continent, the Holy Land, the motherland, and thus they can desire to claim all of the biblical and secular history of the world, and claim to be the fathers of all humanity. It's a fucking game. Okay, that's why they say the Dajjal means deceiver. It's a game to deceive humanity. Okay, we're going to go to video 3. Okay, I'm going to read this part and we're going to go to video 3. So, it was said a child would lead them, right? A child. So the consciousness of the King Michael Joseph, the legendary King Michael Joseph Ljackson, sweet baby, okay, would lead humanity in this to the Christ consciousness in this new 24,000 new celestial New Year cycle, right? And Michael Joseph Ljackson was that child born to lead humanity. Okay, so we're going to go to video 3. Salam alaikum.